Since 2010, there is a program in the country who has more wins than anybody else in the month of March. So for 15 years now.
There's a coach or a program?
Or I guess 14 years, a program.
Okay.
But that program has had one coach. So technically it is the program and it is the coach. Since 2010, most wins in the month of March, Oregon after beating USC on, was that game Saturday? That was Saturday. Which they got off to a horrible start, and then USC's bad. Came back and beat them by 20.
bad.
Like, Oregon was down by 15 points 5 minutes into that game and won the game by 20.
Yeah.
Since 2010, Oregon has 72 wins in March. That is number one in the country.
How many titles do they have?
Oh, yeah.
Kansas
and North Carolina both have 71.
Yeah.
So technically by the end of this month, this graphic could be different. But as of right now, they have 71. Kentucky has 69 and Duke has 66. They have more wins in the month of March than any program in the country over the last 15 years. My team is heading to potentially a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. We'll see how the final 2 games of the regular season go. And there are still people in the fan base that want to fire that head coach.
No, there's not.
Yes, there are.
No.
They exist. One of them works here. Looking at you, Corn Pop. One of them works here.
He wants to fire Altman?
He is an anti-Dana Altman guy.
Corn Pop wants
Corn
to fire
Pop is
Dana
out
Altman?
on Dana Altman. It's not enough.
What?
What he has done is not enough. Win a championship. He's got all the resources. Why can't he win a title?
They hadn't won a title since like 1940.
Yeah,
They won the first
1939.
NCAA title.
Thank you very much.
1939.
I mean, it didn't really
1939.
count.
Get
but
you one of
yeah,
these. Get you one of these. That's what people say. Get you one of these.
How many Final Fours had they been to?
The answer would be 0, to my knowledge, 0.
In the modern era?
In the modern era. Now
0?
1. Now 1.
Okay,
so,
all right.
And he led you there.
I don't know. This idea of firing people because they don't win the championship is laughable to me.
It's really ridiculous.
And
and
if that's your standard, see, I think of two.
It was just another reminder of, like, I turned that game on and they were down like 15-4, and I was like, oh God, what happened? And then you look up like 20 minutes later and you're up by 10 at halftime. You're like, oh, okay, things will be all right.
Much harder to win in college basketball, I would argue, than the NBA.
Yes,
for most places.
You don't have a 7-game series where the best team always wins. It's a one-off.
So, saying that, I'll go back to our last segment conversation where I was going to add, I understand why you and many people like you feel how you feel. I also want this team to be a legit title contender, okay? There is an element where I'm seeing laser tag Tim and just so sweet, man. And my brother-in-law and people at the bar and your dad that, like, I'll at least acknowledge they're probably living a more happy existence in sports.
Yeah.
They're not beholden to this standard that's maybe unrealistic, of this standard of, well, you're not good enough, be better. They're just like, hey, we beat the Nets on Friday. Let's have a good weekend, guys. And then, like, they enjoy the close losses against the best team in the NBA. There's an element of that I will acknowledge, like, it's probably the most healthy way to live as a sports fan is to not be overbearing in your life on this. I kind of take that rule and I throw it into the college basketball world and say, please don't be demanding of a title.
Yeah.
Like being a conference title winner multiple times.
Going to the tournament more often than not, winning tournament game. He's never been to the tournament and lost his first game. Every time he's been to the tournament in Oregon, he's won a game.
They always win 20 games when he coaches. Like
every season.
And it's like a real 20 wins.
Yep.
It's not like my team who beat a lot of patsies and can't win a road game. It's
They've had some years where the non-conference schedule wasn't the toughest, but, they find their way to 20 wins every year he's been there.
They got the most quadrant run wins, or they're just second in that category. Like, there's an element of that where Corn Pops of the world, I get you want to hoist the trophy, but you're going to the dance, man.
More often than not.
You're going to the dance.
Just enjoy it. Enjoy that part of it. Yeah, I feel differently about this. Just college basketball is so...
It's a different beast.
It's so herky-jerky, and every year there's roster turnover, although it sounds like some other guys, because of the JUCO ruling, could be back next year if they decide. Like, Biddle's got another year if he wants it.
How is that possible?
Tracy, I believe, is another guy who's got another year if he wants it. There's a few of them that might come back, and they're like, hell yeah, we'll take Biddle. You want to come back for another year? We'll take you, man. Play another year of basketball. That was fun on Saturday. I turned it on. The little guy was taking a nap. I got home. They were trailing. You're like, oh, look at that. they absolutely murdered USC, which is delightful to see anytime. And the way that they played right now and the way that they're finishing the year. You say this a lot about teams at this point of the year. You want to be playing your best basketball late. They went through that midseason swoon. Now they're seemingly heading back in the other direction. You got Indiana.
Got a big game tomorrow with
and
Indiana.
you got Washington left on your schedule. You got a chance to be a 8 seed, 7 seed, potentially, maybe a 9 seed in the Big Ten tournament. You're locked into the NCAA tournament. Kwame Evans is coming on. I think playing really good basketball the last couple of weeks. Shellstat, after some no-show, like, why is he only taking 5-shot kind of games, is now back to being a consistent scorer. Biddle's been consistent all year, so very exciting to see them turn that corner. And that graphic that was floated out during the game on Saturday, I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. That Dana Altman guy, man. Pretty good coach, especially this time of year.
On your madness point, because it's now March, I actually think this is going to happen. I think this year's been so up and down and tough to decipher between probably Auburn is the most elite team in basketball. We would all agree with that. Houston's right there as well. After that, you could say St. John's, you could say Alabama, you could say Tennessee, you could say Duke.
Yeah, with Cooper Flag.
The tough part with Duke for me is like you just don't see teams carried by the youth like that. And they could very well shake that, buck that trend. I think this is a year where we're going to get a Butler VCU Final Four team. We're going to get a random team.
Mid-major who's been together 3 or 4 years. Does that happen very often, though, anymore now?
Well, no, but there's a team on the West Coast. There's a team on the West Coast.
Ooh, St. Mary's? You sniffing St. Mary's?
St. Mary's is, dude, they're sound. They're together. They're experienced. They're borderline pro players from Australia.
Yeah.
I mean,
how is that team barely ranked in the top 25?
They don't get it
because they're not. They didn't play the toughest non-conference schedule.
Yeah.
It's the conference.
I saw that the Oregon State game on Saturday. Was that Saturday night?
Yeah.
Everything's a blur for me at this point. And they were like 26-4, ranked 22nd in the country, and I'm like,
the Fighting Gaffneys are good.
Those two things don't really connect.
They'll all be about matchups for St. Mary's.
That's all it is. But I really think this is a year where we're going to end up, and maybe I'll be wrong on this because
we had Florida Atlantic get there 2-3 years ago with Dusty May.
That was 2 years ago, I believe, if I remember correctly. Florida Atlantic was there. So you've had the randoms. I would put San Diego State in that category as well.
Yeah, they were definitely
San Diego State was a Mountain West team. You're like, oh, look at that. They're in the Final Four.
This kind of feels like that season where it's like, oh, random good team that nobody really watched that won their conference is here.